I think I didn't do anything wrong, just needed to know if my marriage still meant something. But when my husband walked in and saw me kissing his brother, the question answered itself. Now he's gone, his lawyer's letters keep coming, and everyone's treating me like the villain for being honest about wanting to feel again. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. It started as a joke, or at least that's what I told myself. Noah had always been the fun one, Evan's younger brother, easygoing, warm, everything my husband used to be before life turned serious. We were sitting in the backyard after a family lunch, Evan inside taking a work call that had already dragged past an hour. I told Noah I sometimes wondered if love just faded with time. He said it didn't have to. I laughed and said maybe I needed a reminder of how it should feel. He smiled, quiet but knowing. When he leaned closer, I didn't stop him. The kiss was soft, uncertain, and over in seconds. It didn't even feel romantic. It felt like proof that something was missing between Evan and me. I told myself I needed to know if it felt wrong. It didn't. That scared me more than anything. I pulled away, already planning how I'd explain it to myself later. But before I could speak, the sliding door opened. Evan was standing there, his phone still in his hand, his face completely blank. He didn't shout or ask why. He just turned, walked back inside, and closed the door. That silence was the answer I wasn't ready for. The next morning, he was gone. His keys were missing, his closet half empty. I told myself he'd gone to cool off, that he'd come home once he realized it meant nothing. When Tess called, I told her it was just a stupid moment, a test. She said softly, "You kissed his brother, Leora. That's not a test." I snapped that Evan had been distant for months, that I only wanted to feel wanted again. She didn't argue, just said, "You always have a reason, don't you?" By afternoon, Margaret called. Her voice was cold enough to make me shiver. She said Evan had dropped Sophie off with her for a few days, and that I shouldn't bother showing up. I told her she was overreacting, that families forgive worse. She said, "Not this time." Then she hung up. I waited all night, pacing, messaging him over and over, long paragraphs about how we could move past it, how it wasn't cheating if it didn't mean anything. No reply. The next morning, an email came from a new address. One sentence, "All communication will go through my lawyer." I stared at the screen until it blurred, still convincing myself he was only trying to scare me. By the weekend, I decided to face everyone head-on. The Danes were hosting a family barbecue, and I showed up uninvited, pretending everything was normal. People went quiet when they saw me. I smiled like I didn't notice and started handing out plates, saying Evan was just working through his feelings. When someone asked about Noah, I said it was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Margaret muttered that I had no shame. I told her she shouldn't take sides until she knew the full story, that Evan had been cold for months while I carried the weight of the marriage alone. Noah arrived late, eyes down, refusing to meet mine. When I tried to talk to him, he just said, "Don't." Everyone heard. The air went heavy. I tried to laugh it off, saying, "Brothers fight, couples fight, families heal." No one laughed. Then, Evan appeared at the gate, wearing a crisp shirt like he'd dressed for a meeting, not a reunion. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, "Thank you for proving my point," and set a thick envelope on the patio table. I asked what it was, but he was already walking back to his car. The label read, "Acknowledgement of Misconduct." 2 days later, I sat in a law office that smelled of old carpet and cold coffee. Evan was across the table, calm, unreadable. His lawyer spoke for him, using words like division of assets and custody assessment. I tried to interrupt, saying this was ridiculous, that we could talk like adults. Evan just kept his eyes on the papers. I told him I'd only kissed Noah because I needed to understand what was wrong between us. I said it wasn't betrayal, it was desperation. His lawyer looked unimpressed. When I started to cry, Evan finally spoke. He said, "You didn't test the marriage, Leora. You confirmed it." I begged him to stop acting like a stranger, to remember that I'd stood by him for years. He nodded once and said, "I remember everything." Then he opened a folder and slid it toward me. Inside were photographs, grainy shots from the backyard, time-stamped from that afternoon. He'd installed cameras months earlier, he explained quietly, after I accused him of being paranoid. I couldn't breathe. Margaret was sitting behind him, expression tight but calm. I looked at her, hoping for sympathy, but she just said, "You did this to yourself." I tried to grab Evan's hand, but he moved it away without even looking up. I said this wasn't justice, it was revenge. He said, "Revenge is loud, this is quiet." Then he signed the final page with a steady hand and thanked his lawyer for their time. I sat there in my wrinkled blouse, realizing I'd built my entire defense on feelings, while he'd built his case on facts. When the lawyer asked if I had any questions, I couldn't speak. Evan stood, nodded politely, and walked out, his silence sharper than anything I'd ever said to him. After the meeting, I tried to rewrite the story. I posted smiling pictures of Sophie and me at the park, writing captions about healing and forgiveness. Friends commented with hearts, and for a few hours I almost believed it. But then screenshots started circulating, those photos from the backyard camera. Someone leaked them. The comments turned cruel, and Tess called to say I should stop pretending. "You're making it worse," she said. I told her Evan was manipulating everyone, trying to look perfect. She sighed and said, "He doesn't have to try." The next morning, a courier came with another envelope. Inside was a custody petition and a detailed financial summary showing every account I'd ever depended on, frozen. I laughed, but it sounded more like choking. Margaret's signature was listed as witness. He'd planned everything. I threw the papers on the counter and texted him again, begging him to talk, to remember the years before all this. The message stayed unread. That night, the house felt enormous and empty. I stood by the window, staring at the reflection of a woman who'd kissed her husband's brother just to feel alive, and realized she'd destroyed the only person who ever made her feel safe. The courthouse was quiet except for the shuffle of papers and the low hum of voices. Evan stood near the bench, dressed neatly, his lawyer beside him. I tried to meet his eyes, but he didn't look at me. When the judge read the decision, custody granted to him, property divided, my access limited, I felt the words sink like stones. I said it wasn't fair, that one mistake shouldn't erase everything. Evan finally turned toward me, calm as ever, and said, "It wasn't one mistake, Leora. It was a choice." Margaret placed a hand on his shoulder, while Sophie waited in the hallway with her backpack. I called out that I just wanted to say goodbye, but no one stopped. The clerk handed me the final documents, still warm from the printer. I stood there clutching them, watching Evan take Sophie's hand and lead her outside into the afternoon light. She looked back once, confused but trusting, then turned away. I thought about that kiss, how small it was, how meaningless I swore it would be, and how it had ended everything. He never shouted, never cursed, never broke a thing. He simply answered the question I was foolish enough to ask. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.